how low do the Lady Vols have to go to fire Kellie Harper? Let's jump into that right now. And it is our topic for 4 Downs, brought to you by Dynasty Pools and Spas. So let me start you off with this. We're going to hop in the hot tub with Cooper Mays. Coop, what should people do?
Cooper Mays here. Hit like and subscribe.
Yeah, that's right. And John, are you comfortable hopping in the hot tub with Cooper?
Coop here. First down.
All right. How bad does Tennessee's final record have to be a pretty big strike against Kellie Harper? Because we know it's a postseason sport, but you also can go 5-24 or something like Wade Houston did, and that looks pretty darn bad. So at what point does the regular season record really hurt Kellie Harper, John?
Well, I just go back to the last coach, Holly Warlick.
Yes.
I often confuse the two and call Kellie Holly. Holly was there 7 years. She was fired. She went to the NCAA tournament every year. She went to 3 Elite Eights. And I thought Tennessee did need to make a change because the program was declining. And Tennessee once had the preeminent program in women's college basketball. It obviously doesn't anymore. I don't expect the next coach to come anywhere near matching Pat Summitt. She's one of the greatest coaches of all time. But just out of respect for what Pat Summitt did with this program, it needs to do more than what Kellie is delivering. I mean, it's just but see, I don't know how low it has to go. Maybe it has to lose the rest of its games because Danny White gave her a contract extension after last season. That tells me that the administration is fine if the Lady Vols make the NCAA tournament, reach the Sweet 16, which it did. I guess I look at this program differently than all the others at Tennessee because to me, the program is Pat Summitt, and she's no longer with us. There's a statue there prominently displayed of Pat Summitt to remind us what she accomplished: 8 national titles, too many Final Fours to count. But just out of respect for what she built, I think it's incumbent on Tennessee to maintain a certain level of competence in the sport. It's just gradually falling into nothingness. I mean, I think it will make the NCAA tournament.
Well,
but if it didn't make the NCAA tournament, to me, you would have to fire. But I don't think it will. I just think it will muddle along.
Ted says, well said, John Adams. I agree with everything you said. Caleb, as far as a regular season record, Tennessee's 12-7. I think the regular season record would, if we were talking about men's basketball, because of a point you brought up yesterday, would be not making the tournament. But Tennessee, because they want them in the tournament so bad, could win 17 games and get in the tournament. So I don't know that there's really an answer to my question. Maybe it's just stupid.
That's how Holly Warlick got in her last year. That Tennessee team, John probably remembers, had no business going to the NCAA tournament, but they wanted the Lady Vols in the NCAA tournament.
Sure. And yeah,
sorry,
I agree. No, I agree, Caleb. It did. Tennessee is such a brand name, and so with the sport, but the brand name, it's losing so much of its luster year by year. And I really don't think the NCAA cares now if Tennessee's in the tournament.
No, they don't. But here's a larger problem.
Maybe slipped at that point.
They might, because here's a larger problem, and this is why I don't know if Danny White will make a move. I think he will, but John, to bolster your point, I'll get to that in a minute. To bolster your point, the reason it may just be qualifying for the NCAA tournament, maybe all that matters. LSU, it came out yesterday, the women's basketball program lost $7.8 million. Despite all the hype behind Angel Reese and everything, it's a money pit, women's basketball right now for most programs. I think Danny White is seeing that, and in an age of NIL where you have to be a little more meticulous with your dollars, is thinking, is it worth investing heavily in women's basketball when you just won't get the financial return out of it?
Well, that leads us to second down, and this sounds awful, but
Cooper Mays here. Second down.
does Danny White really care? I mean, he's a money guy. This sport, even in its heyday under Pat Summitt, lost $1 million. Is that why he signed Tennessee's Kellie Harper up for a contract? I mean, does he really care at the end of the day, or does he just want to cover his potential losses, John? Because if you could break even, that's more money that you could spend on NIL. But you got to have it because of Title IX.
Yeah, that could be how he looks at it. I just have a hard time justifying why when he gives a coach an extension for making the Sweet 16 of the NCAA tournament. That to me tells you all you needed to know. If he would have been the AD when Holly Warlick was in charge, he wouldn't have fired Holly Warlick. She was doing better than Kellie is. So why? I mean,
it's almost like I can't expect a guy that's not a Tennessee guy to understand what the Lady Vols mean to the community, and he's not a Tennessee guy. It's not a knock on him. If he wants to save money so he can spend more in NIL and get another Nico, nobody's going to complain. Caleb, do you think he views the Lady Vols way different than we do? I guess is the question.
Possibly, but I'm just going to say that might be a good thing. I think one of the reasons the Lady Vols are struggling right now is because the Lady Vols have this idea, Lady Vol fan base has this idea of what they should be. And it's very Notre Dame and football-esque. And it's the reason Notre Dame hasn't won a national championship since 1989 is many of the fans. You shouldn't do that when talking about women's sports.
That is a hot take. Maybe you just shouldn't throw money at it anymore.
And
I mean,
remember,
listen, I run a business. I've had to make decisions and stuff I'm not throwing money at anymore.
Well, what I was actually going to things like the coaching hires itself. If John remembers this, when Dave Hart made the difficult decision, and it was difficult, he basically forced Pat Summitt to turn the whistle over to Holly Warlick. That upset a lot of fans. And I'm like, guys, y'all really want somebody who has this serious illness coaching on the sidelines? That's not, you can't have that. And then when Fulmer tried to do a coaching search, Lady Vols community just hounded on him and said, you've got to get a Summit protege. You got to get a former Lady Vol who played for Summit. Why? This is the stuff that derails programs. This is what derailed Alabama until they hired Nick Saban. They kept saying, we got to find a Bear Bryant's protege. We got to find a guy who was tied to Bear. And I think the Lady Vol community is more detrimental to the Lady Vol success than anything that could possibly. They are more detrimental than anything to the Lady Vol success, the Lady Vol fan base.
That's a valid assessment, and it's true in some ways, but that's part of the fan base. Not all of the fan base is like that. And now that it's had two former Lady Vols, integral. I mean, Holly Warlick was as Lady Vol as you could get. She played and starred for Tennessee teams. She was a longtime assistant coach under Summit. Tennessee had no choice but to hire her. The transition was going to be traumatic no matter what. It had to hire her. And I mean, it couldn't say, Pat, it's not a good idea for you to keep coaching. And it wasn't a good idea. But then you can't, and then you're going to say, but we're not going to appoint your assistant to replace you, your longtime assistant. No, that is what needed to be done. And Tennessee gave her 7 years, and she won quite a few games. She made the tournament every year, 3 Elite Eights, as I said, but the program was slipping. Okay, so then Tennessee makes the decision. I guess there was enough pressure from boosters. Philip Fulmer, I'm sure, wanted nothing to do with women's basketball. Oh, I got to hire somebody. Tennessee could have hired the Louisville coach, who's one of the best coaches in the country. He wanted the job, and he would have come here probably for the same amount of money he was making at Louisville. But as Caleb pointed out, oh no, you limit yourself when you say you got to get a Lady Vol, someone with Tennessee ties, or even you limit yourself even when you say, well, you got to have a woman coach. No, you got to have the best coach you can get if you want to do credit to Pat Summitt's legacy. And that's kind of how I look at this.
I agree.
I look at it.
Summitt would not back any of her former players just because they're former players. She would give you the honest assessment and say, that's a great coach. That's a okay coach. That's a crappy coach. Don't hire.
And I just think again, Pat Summitt had an incredible positive impact on the University of Tennessee. It went way beyond sports.
Agreed.
Everybody knew Pat Summitt. She was an incredible goodwill ambassador for the university, for all of East Tennessee, for the state.
Agreed.
And that's what bothers me about what's happening with the program now. It's just going down, down, down. It's not falling off the map.
It's a sad slow slide. Is the Sweet 16 the worst thing that could happen for the Lady Vols? What down is that, Coop?
Tennessee center Cooper Mays here. Third down.
I'm going to ask each of us that question. 60 seconds. Dynasty pools and spas mentioned off the hook sports. Get $500 off any spa you choose. Having the best spas made right here in the United States of America in your backyard. Dynasty Pools and Spas. Their showroom is open in Athens, right off the interstate. You can stop by and check out the best hot tubs and spas in the market. And then delivery, yes, they can do that to Knoxville or Chattanooga. They've got complete support, spa cover, and chemicals to keep your spa bubbling at its best. They also have pool chemicals as well. Dynasty Pools and Spas, amazing discounts for first responders, military, and even some blemish models that can save you a ton, and no one will ever notice. Mention Off the Hook Sports, get $500 off. Mention Off the Hook Sports, get $500 off. Dynasty Pools and Spas. Go to dynastypoolsandspas.com or stop by that showroom in Athens. dynastypoolsandspas.com. Dynasty Pools and Spas. So it's back in 2008 that a school called Georgia, maybe you've heard of them, won the SEC basketball tournament. So they had to hold on to Dennis Felton because he got in the NCAA tournament. I'm going to go ahead and tell you that Tennessee making the Sweet 16 this year, if they can even do that, is the worst possible thing that could happen. Winning a championship's the best, right? But not making the tournament or getting bounced in the first two rounds would be better, because then you would definitely make a change. John, thoughts on that logic? Am I right or wrong?
Yeah, I kind of agree with that. But then here's the other factor in it. I'm not sure Tennessee cares that much. So even if Kelly wasn't the coach, I mean, if you said, okay, this is not good enough, Tennessee, we're not satisfied with the Sweet 16. We certainly aren't satisfied with not making the tournament. Need to make a coaching change. You fire Kellie Harper. Okay, well then who do you hire? You've got to go out and try and get one of the best coaches in the country. Or otherwise, I guess just keep Kelly around. You should have just kept Holly around.
Let me rephrase the question for Caleb. If you want to be elite, is the Sweet 16 the worst thing that could happen for Tennessee's Lady Ball program?
Oh, it's absolutely the worst. It's as bad as, you guys remember 2006. There was a rumor that Shula could have kept his job if he had beaten Auburn that year.
Yeah.
And I think every Alabama fan looks back and they're like, thank God Alabama lost to Auburn that game. And so, I mean, it's absolutely the worst if they go to the Sweet 16. You want them bounced out early. Yeah.
John's been incredible this time. What down, Coop?
All SEC center Cooper Mays here. Fourth down.
Okay. Last thing. Let's say Tennessee makes the Sweet 16, which is very possible even at the 12-7 record, because we know that they're going to be big time favorites over the first team they play, because it is still women's well, maybe not, depending on their seeding. But what do you think will ultimately, forget the seeding stuff, just take that aside. What do you think ultimately happens this year? John, if you were to predict, based off, we're unsure if Danny White even cares nearly as much as a lot of the fans do. We know the fans can undermine a potential hire. He knows that. So how do you see this thing ending at the end of the day?
Well, I see Tennessee edging into the NCAA tournament field just barely, maybe by a game, maybe less or in, and then losing first or second game in the tournament, and Kellie Harper returning as coach.
Ouch. Okay, I'm 1 second, and then Caleb, because you're very tuned in with the Lady Vols. That would be awful. That would just be purely awful to Pat Summitt's legacy. And I think there's going to be a change made. I think that, and the reason I think so is because Danny White's been so quiet about it. So I just get the feeling, this is me on the outside looking in, that they make a change. Caleb, you tell me, sir.
I agree with you, Dave. John, I agree that's what happens, but I think Danny White fires Kellie Harper. And I've seen Danny White's track record as a hire at Buffalo, as a hire at UCF. He found women's basketball coaches at both of those programs that are doing very well. We talk about him fundraising. He's the best coach hirer in the country of any athletic director, and his track record proves it. I think he knows that. There are candidates out there right now that are really, really good in coaching that would take the Lady Vol job in a heartbeat on a discount too. And so I have more faith in him than I ever had, for instance, in John Curry in 2017, when I knew that John Curry didn't know what he was doing when he didn't fire Butch Jones. I think Danny White's a little bit different story. And so I think that's what they'll do and what they should do. And the biggest thing is, I know we keep talking about the legacy of Pat Summitt. If Tennessee is going to be successful long-term, they have to let Summitt rest in peace. They have to bury Pat Summitt, and they have to actually think about the future of the program. The same way Alabama had to bury the hat. That's what they finally said when they hired Nick Saban. They can't think about even Summitt's legacy. Because I even think part of the reason the program fell behind was Pat Summitt was such a purist at the end, canceling the series with UConn over wasn't that big of a recruiting violation Gina was doing. I mean, you can't do things like that. Thinking.
I agree with that, John. It's a shame that Greg Schiano is not able to make the decision, because right now he would probably be flaming out as a coach, and Tennessee likes to hire their former coaches as athletic directors, so maybe he'd be making that decision. Thought I'd throw a little in there. I knew you like that.
Sorry. When I keep talking about Summitt's legacy and how much it means to the state and to the area and to the program, I'm not saying Tennessee needs to recreate what Pat Summitt did. I say you don't forget about Pat Summitt. You honor her legacy, but the program going forward has to be somebody else's program now. It doesn't have to have any Lady Vol connections to it. It just needs to be, make it on your own. And that's the best way to honor Pat Summitt. And I just kind of feel like, and maybe this is, I don't know, maybe I'm being too sentimental here, but I just admired her a lot for what she did. And I just kind of think Tennessee owes her that much. But again, you honor her by getting the best coach you can.
Amen.
And you don't worry about Lady Vols past. How many Lady Vol coaches, how many former Lady Vol players have been raging successes as a head coach?
Would you say raging, not Carol Lawson?
No, not raging.
No,
he's been good.
no.
But
Yeah, no,
John, it's very similar.
I'm with you, and I would say this too about Pat Summitt. I have no doubt that she would make the hard decision. Let's say she were the athletic director, okay? Like, she didn't get sick, but she didn't want to coach anymore. She would make the hard decision in terms of, I don't think this is the person to hire. Just like she made the hard decisions, and we can debate it. She didn't want to play UConn anymore. She knew that would hurt women's basketball, but she took a stand. She did 15,000 media interviews asking the same question individually with each television station before or after practice. She did all kinds of things that she didn't want to do because she thought it was best for women's basketball of the program.